Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would go over some of the most cold tolerant plants that I own, seeing as I recently tested, unintentionally tested, this theory that I didn't even have, to see which plants would survive the best in really, really cold conditions. And we have discovered many important things, I feel. So I would like to share that with you, share that with the class, and let you know what my findings were so that potentially you could avoid having to do this study on your own. So basically what happened is I left for 5 days, I think it was, in the middle of winter, and I live in a house that does not have central heating or any sort of way to maintain heat while, well, not really, it has a way to maintain heat while you're not there, but it's not safe. So basically my house either has pellet stoves or radiators to heat the house, and neither of those are safe to run when you're not there, especially if you're not going to be there for a long time. So my house was sitting in about 12 to 15 degree weather during the day, pretty cold at night, with no heat consistently for 5 days, and my plants dealt with that. So I do have a video, it's my last posted video, that documented the slow decline of the plants that got affected by the weather. And I also realized that there were a good amount that didn't have any issues. So I'm going to share with you the most cold tolerant plants that I have, and also a couple of the worst cold tolerant plants, so that if you ever have to leave your plants alone in the freezing cold, you know which ones to protect and which ones you can leave a little bit to survive. But, you know, yeah. I don't know if this will be beneficial to anybody, but I thought it was interesting. So we'll start off with the most cold tolerant plants because they really blew me away, honestly. And for the most part, I feel like there's definitely one, is it genus or species? Whatever. There's one type of plant that really did super well. I have a couple, a handful of these that did insanely well. Like, didn't even get damaged, not even bothered by the cold. And for that, it was the monsteras in my collection. So one of them I have right here. This is, oh gosh, it has water under it. This is a Monstera adansonii. And this guy literally, like, did not even care. Like, nothing happened. This plant looks, I think honestly the only issue it had was it was not having water for those 5 days. Like, I did water everybody before, but I think that was like honestly the only thing that affected this plant. Was like, hey, I could use a drink, but I'll be fine. If not, I'll just handle this 20-degree weather, no big deal. And yeah, like literally no cold damage on these leaves. This plant did insanely well. Another monstera that I have that literally had absolutely no damage whatsoever is my Thai constellation. Leaves looked perfectly fine, not any damage at all. It has not taken any hits to the growth. This leaf was already brown before I left, long before I left. Nothing extended. This is as brown as this leaf was when I left. Everybody else looks great, and I don't know if you can see, we have a baby on the way. But yeah, this plant killed it. They're like, cold too, I don't even care. And it's not even like it got weak, anything like that. It's still just been growing strong as ever. No problem at all. The last one I'll show you as a good example of monsteras doing fantastic is my regular Monstera deliciosa. This guy just nothing. Nothing, not even a little bit of sadness in the leaves, not even a little bit of yellow, brown. Like this little bit of brown was there before as well. But yeah, it honestly, Monsteras, and I also have a Standeliana that did good. I have another Deliciosa that did perfectly fine, and it was like in a window. Yeah, they handled it like champions. Have had no issues with the cold, and just kind of continue to thrive. So Monstera is my number one for cold tolerant plants. The next amazing cold tolerant plant I have is actually one, it was like literally sitting in the window, like plenty of cold, and it did not care at all. Philodendron Brazil. I have another one of these in my house as well that totally fine, not even the tiniest bit of damage on the plants. Honestly, if anything, it was just like, hey, I'm thirsty, that's all. But yeah, this guy was in the window in the cold where two other plants were in that exact same window and did not do well at all. And this guy did not care at all, like just kept growing wonderfully. And I don't think it's philodendrons at all, because I had a lot of philodendrons that did not do good, but the Brazil did amazing. I don't know what particularly about the Brazil made it do so awesome, but it did great. Another one that's actually right in the same area as the Adansonii is my Maranta. I only have one Maranta, so I don't know if this is a fluke. It did seem to be a little bit sad when I got back, but no cold damage. It honestly just looked a little bit droopy and sad, but perked right back up as soon as I gave it some water. And honestly, we had no damage, like no leaves got lost, anything like that. So I don't know if this one is just a fluke because I only have this one, but it did really, really well in the cold. The next two that I have to talk about, they're kind of hard to like show you, but there's honestly, like, you could, even showing you is not really going to do anything because you couldn't even notice any sort of cold damage on it. And those two were my bird of paradise, which I have two of. One is really big and one is like smaller. Both of them totally fine, and they were both in really cold areas by windows, and not even like the tiniest bit of damage. They've continued to do really great after the cold even. So yeah, which I was actually kind of surprised because I feel like bird of paradises are relatively tropical, but I guess when you think about it, like a lot of bird of paradises do live outside, so maybe they're just a little bit more cold tolerant than any other plant. But yeah, bird paradise, and the other one was Syngonium. I only have two Syngoniums, but they both didn't even look like anything happened to them. The last two that were super cold tolerant was my Norfolk Island pine, which I think is another one that, like, it is tropical, but they do tend to grow outside a lot. Like I see them in Southern California. I mean, Southern California doesn't really get cold, but I do know that they grow outside quite often, just like bird of paradise. And it didn't even drop a pine needle, didn't even drop nothing. I know they're not really pines, but yeah, nothing, not even. And it was also by a window, which at this point you're like, maybe it's just by a window that they survived. No, I had a lot that were by windows that did not survive or did not do well at all. So it wasn't that, but windows typically would be the colder area, and it did really great. And my last category of plants was pothos, except for my Mandrula pothos. That was the only one that did not do well with the cold. It was also by a window, and yeah, my Mandrula dropped a lot of leaves, but my golden pothos, my marble queen pothos, my global green pothos, trying to think what other pothos I even have, but yeah, all the rest of them, oh, my pearls and jade pothos, all did great. Absolutely no cold damage whatsoever, and they just lived their best lives, and I was very impressed with them. Lastly, I'll just go over a couple of the plants that did absolutely terrible in the cold, which some of which were immediately like oh my gosh, as soon as I got home, I knew that this was a problem. And then others slowly declined after a while. So I'll just go over those really fast. If you want to see more detailed information, you can watch my video and kind of watch the decline of everybody. I'll start with the ones that showed damage right at the beginning, and then go with the ones that did not show damage at the beginning but then proceeded to get really bad over time. The first one was my philodendron burl marks. As soon as I saw that plant, I knew that there was a problem. It was also in a window, but it really got hit by the cold. The leaves like just disintegrated and started falling right off at the stem, at the petiole. And yeah, it was from the second I saw that plant, I knew, okay, we've got some issues here. The next one was Paraiso Verde. That one really shriveled up and looked sad immediately. When I got into the house, I knew that there was something wrong with that one. The other ones are a little bit obvious. I feel like Peace Lily, they're really heavy drinkers as well. So I think in combination of the cold and the lack of a lot of water, really affected them. But Peace Lilies really looked sad as soon as I walked in the door. Those were the three types of plants that I say were like the most obvious when I first got home that had suffered some damage. And the other ones that didn't show immediate signs of cold damage but declined slowly, really hard the next month, were my Nangary tents, which actually is right here, so I could just grab it and show you what I have left, because I am down to 2 leaves. I think I started out with 5 or 6, and the 2 leaves that I have are significantly cold damaged. But this guy looked totally fine for the first, I'd say, like week, and then it just really took a turn for the worst. And yeah, this is what we're left with as of right now. Not super great. The Tordum, which apparently I found out after the fact that this is just a known thing with Tordums. They hate cold. My Tordum looked totally fine, and then probably like 2 weeks after just dropped all its leaves, everything. And it's just a leafless stump. I can show you that just so you can see. So it's not actually leafless, but these 2 leaves are going to fall off. They will not last. But this is what I'm going to be left with, is just this little stump. It just dropped all of its leaves, and these guys are still hanging on, but they're not gonna last. The stump is still doing good, and it is working on putting out a new leaf. But yeah, it really hated the cold, and it did not show signs of that until about 2 weeks, week and a half to 2 weeks later, and then everything just fell off. Minus these 2 that are hanging on, which those 2 are the oldest leaves, so maybe they were a little bit stronger than the newer leaves, but yeah, everything died. My Gloriosum did not show immediate signs of cold damage, but probably within a couple days they started to shrivel up and die, and then the leaves fell off. Same thing with my El Chaco Red, which I'll grab that one too. El Chaco still has its 3 leaves on. They do not want to fall off yet, but they are clearly very dead. And then it did put out a new leaf, which is small, understandably so, but it looks good. It's doing its best. But yeah, I still have these ugly leaves on there. They're not ready to come off yet. Yeah, they're still not ready to come off, but this one was another one that took a couple days, and then it just started from the outside just creeping in, and then now I'm left with this. But yeah, it took a little while. I already briefly talked about the Manjula pothos, but that one was also one that did not show signs immediately, but slowly started to lose leaves and show the cold damage a little bit later on. That was the one pothos that had any sort of issues. And lastly was my Philodendron micans. That one did not show any damage. I would say probably for like a week and a half to 2 weeks, and then leaves started yellowing and getting cold, getting like spots all over it. I think that was a lot of the issues with the plants, was like it looked like little parts of them like froze and like died. because of the cold. So a lot of the damaged leaves had spots on them where the like cells had died inside, and then slowly the whole leaf succumbed after that. But yeah, so that was my experience dealing with cold in plants. And I had a lot of plants that did fine, but those were like the outliers on either side that did really, really terrible or really, really good. It was very interesting to see this all progress and see how everything handled it. I do know a lot for next winter if I do have to leave this house, and well, if I do have to leave my plants in this house and I'm still living in this house that doesn't have central heat, I now know what plants to look out for the most and who to protect and which ones I can kind of leave to their own devices. So hopefully that was informative, at least for you. Maybe you don't even live in a cold environment, so you won't ever have to deal with this. But if you do, now you kind of know Monsteras are the way to go. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!